All right, Matt here. All right, Matt here. So we're at the cleaning stage of the engine rebuild process. I've got the parts laid out on the table. We've got the crankshaft, the main caps, the rockers, and the piston and rod assemblies. And we're going to be putting them in the washer. Now, the only parts that are going to get washed now are the ferrous parts. They're iron or steel parts, because the washer that they're going into is a caustic vat, and not really a vat, it's a caustic washer. It uses water and a caustic detergent to break down carbon so they can get them off of the surfaces and make them nice and clean. So it'll be going into the washer, and I'll show you the washer in a minute. But before we do, the piston and rod assemblies will need to be disassembled, because the pistons aren't going to be reused. Because we're going to actually bore the cylinder oversized so that we can put in larger pistons. They do this for serviceability of the block, so that the block isn't a one and done. So if the engine wears out, it has no service life left in it. And what's available in the aftermarket and even through the OEMs are pistons that are larger than the original bore size. And what that lets a customer do in a machine shop is to give an engine much more life than it was originally designed for. And it could have been that it's worn out, or it could be that there was a fault. You know, because automotive manufacturers have to think about that too, because do they want to be able to rebuild engines or remanufacture them so that they can be replaced under warranty, or do they want to have to always install new engines in these cars with warranty concerns? So on the table I have the parts that we're going to reuse, except for the pistons and the cam gear. The cam gear is a nice big flat surface that it's really dirty, and we're hopefully going to see really well on the cam gear the difference between before washing and after washing. Now, there's a lot of different ways to clean components. You can use brake clean and wire brushes. You can use a washer like I'm using. You can use a solvent vat, you know, to scrub this stuff off. And they're all very good processes, just some are more labor intensive than others. Brake clean and a brush is the cheapest way, but it's very labor intensive. A parts washer with solvent in it, it's less labor intensive because the solvent's always flowing and the brush is right there, and it flows right back into the bottom and it pumps right back up to you. So it's less labor intensive, but it does cost more, and then you just kind of keep going all the way up in cost, but less on labor. So my parts washers, I've got two of them. I've got one that's caustic for cast iron and steel parts, and then the other parts washer is not caustic. It's really for anything, but it's what I use to clean aluminum components, aluminum and magnesium. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the camera. We're going to do a quick walk around on these parts just to get a good close-up, and I'm going to capture some still photos and then overlay them over the video so that we can get good before and afters of the cleaning process. So let me grab the camera and walk around. All right, so here we're at the table. And you see, I'm going to go ahead and throw in one of the pistons into the washer just to see how well it does, and we should be able to see once it comes out, instead of this being a nice clean aluminum color, it's actually going to be you know, it'll probably be dark gray because of the oxidation that the washer causes. So we see the connecting rods, and we see how, you know, how dirty they are, and we're really looking at all the yellow, and not so much the oil, because oil can be wiped off, but it's that yellow that's left over after it. And you can just see how dirty these components are. When we come over here to the crankshaft, we can see that the crankshaft is pretty dirty. Now, the rust out here on the end of the rear crank flange, that rust more than likely is not going to come off, but all the yellowing and the carbon deposits, the stuff on the crank, the journals, the rod journals, that should all come off. And it's kind of hard to see in the picture in the video here, but there's actually like a film over this whole crankshaft that I can feel it. It's very gritty. It's just a buildup of carbon. And then we have the cam gear that I was talking about. So So there's our cam gear, and you see this thing is really dirty. It's actually got a thick layer of goo built up onto it, and I'm going to put that in the washer. Yes, it's going to be replaced because this is a wear item because of the chain that runs against these teeth. It's going to be replaced, but we're going to use it as a test piece. And of course we have all the rockers over here, and then the main caps, just to see how gross they are. So coming over to the washer, I'm going to go ahead and show you the washer first. So you see I've got two parts washers. They're side by side. We've got this one over here on the left, which is for cast iron and steel, and this one over here is for aluminum and really anything. It's safer for all the other parts. So if I open this up, we'll actually get to see inside. So inside this washer, we see that we've got, let me see if I can't. Inside the washer, we can see that we have a turntable. So this piece right here spins around. And as it spins around, there's a series of jets that spray. So I'm going to push the door button to get them to spray. And you see some of those jets are spraying right now. And they spray all the way around it. It's 360 degrees of jet coverage. So if I put something in there, it's rotating while getting blasted with the water and cleaning mixture. And the other one is very similar, but this guy just spins around and it runs for as long as I want. Usually run it for about 30 to 40 minutes. Okay. So it's time to disassemble the connecting rods and get everything loaded up into the parts washer. Here we are, ready for the sub-assembly disassemblies. Now, I've got the valves and springs inside this basket here. This basket's actually pretty inexpensive, and I found them because I visit the Daiso store. It's a little Japanese, kind of like a dollar store. There's a couple here in the DFW area, but they got these baskets. I want to say this thing was like $3. The only problem with it, when it gets really heavy, this handle pops off real easy. I should fix it, but you know, I'm just lazy sometimes. So if it ever gets heavy, I just can't pick it up with the handle. I got to grab it by the bottom of the basket. So let's see if we can get that back in. I'll put this in the washer. I should be able to get everything in the washer. Now I've got the crankshaft. I'm just going to set this to the side. There we go. Set it down behind me. And then we're just going to grab the pistons and try to get them disassembled. The first thing I need to do is remove the circlip, just like on that disassembly video where I was, or not disassembly, but the parts video. I just have to get underneath the clip. Let's see. Now I'm going to need something a little more substantial than my pick. There we go. So I just need to get underneath the clip. Pop that guy out, and I'm just going to set them to the side, get all the clips out first. And because these wrist pins are not pressed into the connecting rod, these are full floating wrist pins. Now the clips, do not reuse them, because the last thing you want to have happen is a clip be loose and come out while the engine's running, because what will happen is the pin will come out and start rubbing on the cylinder wall. Alright, so we're getting our last circlip out. Pop it out of there. Of course, I've got my safety glasses on. That should be a given. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is take this, it's just a socket on an extension, and I need to tap these out. Now the reason I got to tap them out is because the carbon buildup is real heavy on the inside of the piston wrist pin bore. So I'm just going to tap it over like that. I only need to tap it enough to get the connecting rod out, because I can leave the piston just like this, because I'm not using the piston, the wrist pin, the piston, or the piston rings. These are all going to get recycled. So now we have our connecting rod, and we can see it's not too good looking. And lather, rinse, repeat. All right, so we've got them all disassembled and ready to start loading up the washer. All right, well, we've got everything loaded up in the parts washer. You see the crankshaft is strapped up where it's standing up vertically. We've got the rods and the rockers is kind of strewn across the bottom. And then down in the basket there are the valves and valve springs and valve spring retainers. So everything's in there and ready to get washed. So we just close the door. Close the door. Lock the handle down. And away we go. Well, we'll report back in about 30 to 45 minutes. So it's been about 30 or 40 minutes. Let's see how everything came out. First thing I do is when I open it up, you can see there's a lot of steam that comes out because this thing does get pretty hot. Portions of it definitely get up into the 200s. I rinse everything off. And I rinse partly to get the washing solution off, but also to help cool them down because they are very hot. Okay, let's go ahead and start by pulling out the small stuff. Basket here. I set it down here until I can get to blowing it off because I need to dry them off before they get any rusting. Alright, so it looks like they actually came out pretty clean. Let me cool off this crankshaft one more time. I'm also going to spray the crankshaft with a little WD-40 to kind of keep it from flash rusting. There we go. This thing is going to be hot. And heavy. There we go. And then the rods, let's pile them up down here so I can get to blowing them off. There's our piston. They actually came out pretty clean. Not bad for just one cycle. Those over on the table and grab all the rockers. And just throw them up on the table too. I got everything out. So let me close the washer. And what I'm going to do is use the blow gun to blow dry everything as best I can, and then I'll set it up on the table and we'll regroup to see how how clean everything came out. We're back, and here's everything on the table. I've kind of laid it out to where we can get to it and see pretty well. So here's our piston. You can see it's actually gotten pretty clean. Let's see if I can zoom in on that guy. So we see it went from being pretty dirty to actually being pretty clean. Now I didn't even take the piston rings off, so there's going to be some buildup behind the rings that's not going to come out unless I take those out and wash it that way or scrape the rings out. You see on the bottom of the piston, it's pretty clean down inside there. So here's a quick side-by-side of our pistons. You can see, that's the dirty one, and then there's the clean one right there. We flip it over to the top where we can see the chamber side of the piston. You see, this is the rusty one, and it was pretty gross, and this one was pretty much the same condition, and we see how clean it's gotten. So we've done, quite a bit of cleaning has been done just through the parts washer. Okay, so coming around to our other parts, we've got our connecting rods here. We see they're all right there, and kind of get an idea how clean they got. Now, this is also just the preliminary cleaning. Zoom in on that. There we go. And we can see it's actually gotten pretty clean. Now, this side here has kind of a hazy deposit left on it, but that will come off with a little bit more washing. You notice there's a bushing down inside there. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that guy. There we go, there's a bushing down inside there. And, that's one of the connecting rods, and they're all pretty equivalent to that. So on this side of the table, we've got our main caps. You see how clean they've gotten, nice and shiny, and they're mostly clean all the way. Now, they do have that same deposit like on the rods down through here. But like I said, more cleaning will take care of that, and the same parts washer just needs a little bit more time in there. And you see they've all gotten pretty much the same cleanliness. Now, we didn't take any pictures or video of the valve springs, but they're equivalent to the rest of the parts so far, and our valves. So here's an intake valve. We see the head side or the chamber side of the valve right here. It's pretty clean. Now, it's got a blue hue to it, and that's happening because of a reaction in the caustic cleaning solution. The back side of the valve, if we take a close look, there's no more carbon on the back side of the valve. So this system actually is pretty good at removing the carbon from the back of the valve. Now, our exhaust valves, it's a little bit different story because this stuff here is not carbon. Oftentimes it's going to be a calcium buildup that's coming from the oil, and that's not going to come off unless I abrade it off of there. And what people use is a bench grinder with a wire wheel, and I use a blast cabinet. Notice the stem is actually nice and clean all the way up and down until this point where it's exposed in the exhaust port. And, we just have to do some mechanical cleaning on that one. So on to the crankshaft. This is probably the biggest change. You can actually see down there on our rod journal right there that the brown line that was in the middle of the journal, that was the deposit from the exposed bearing surface. It's actually gone. And we've got a lot of the carbon right there. Now, this thing, it's a little shiny because I've actually hit it with some WD-40, but that surface down inside right here, that's almost bare steel. And of course, we have this section right here. It looks like it might be a buildup, and it's actually part of the forging that's coming through, or these are cast, part of the casting coming through. That's a casting surface. We can see that this thing's actually gotten pretty clean. Now, coming down to the bottom of the crankshaft, we'll see the flywheel or flex plate flange. It's pretty rusty, and there's really two reasons for that, because my parts washer isn't really designed to remove rust, but anything that could have been knocked off with the jets, the jets don't really spray on the bottom how I had this. There's not really a direct jet right there. But what I do over time is I wash this thing probably 2 to 3 times in the washer. I'll actually turn it over, or I'll lay it down inside the washer, just so the jets have a chance to get at different angles. So that's parts washing. The next thing that I have is the cylinder heads, and they're going to go in the other washer, and they're pretty much going to follow the same procedure. So there's not a lot of excitement there. So I figured I'll just show you a little bit on cleaning the chambers and removing the valve guides, and that'll be coming up in just a few minutes.